Welcome to this edition of the Rich Urban Show. I'm your host, Richard Urban. Today, we're very happy to have on Bill Ridenour. He's a candidate for Delegate District 100. That's the new district that includes Shannondale and the area around there. So please introduce yourself, Bill.
Yeah, I'm Bill Ridenour. I'm a constitutional conservative. I'm running for the Republican nomination for District 100. I am a retired Marine, and I am also a retired Defense Intelligence Officer. I just retired out of the Pentagon this past year. I was the Strategic Policy Chief for the Intelligence Directorate, J2, within the Pentagon. I have served basically 41 years in the Department of Defense, and I'm recently decided in December that I couldn't watch where the country was going without trying to continue to serve somehow. And I believe that my best option to try and serve is in the state legislature as part of the House of Delegates.
Okay. Well, thank you for that introduction. What do you think are the most important issue or issues that are facing West Virginia right now?
Well, but right now, from when I talk with the constituents that I hope to serve, the issue that I hear the most frequently is the direction of our country as a whole. It's not just about West Virginia. It's a deep and abiding concern with where the country is headed. We have a federal regime that appears to be, in many respects, out of control or controlling, trying to control all aspects of our lives. So that's an issue that I think that the state legislature, specifically under the Federalist system, needs to be addressing. Our Federalist system, designed by the founders, was focused on two aspects: the federal government and the states. And the states, in terms of the state legislatures, were those entities that were supposed to hold the federal government in check. Most people remember from civics and everything that there are checks and balances within the federal government, but the principal check on the federal government was supposed to be the state legislatures.
Yeah, and interesting. That made me think of the whole, the thing with the electoral college and how states were going to challenge the outcome, but that didn't really happen. But I know what you mean. States, the original concept, I believe, of the founders, I think, is, a limited role of the federal government that has gotten huge. Yeah.
Yes, and it was never the intent of the founders for the federal government to become as powerful as it is. There's been a deliberate misinterpretation of the Commerce Clause in order to try and justify the types of federal power that is exercised over most aspects of our lives today. And that was never the intent of the founders. The founders wanted the states to be a major aspect of our government writ large, not just a subsidiary to the federal government. And that's why up until really about the time of the Depression, the federal government was less significant in people's lives than the state governments were in terms of determining where and how government would assist in or regulate the issues within the states.
Okay.
So it's really expanded since the Depression, and it's expanded to the point where it's now become oppressive in many ways.
Right. So talking about mandates, now I know this was a bigger issue 2 years ago in people's minds, but to me, it's still an important issue. So what I'm getting at, since we're talking about the delegates position here in West Virginia, is the mandates that were imposed like in 2020 in West Virginia. Many people were unhappy that the governor justice imposed these mandates that went on and on for months and months and months, for mask mandates and various different restrictions, specifically those kind of the mask mandates and restrictions on entering stores and all that kind of thing. Now, that I was looking through all the legislature for this year that I could see, and that was not ever corrected. It failed. So what happened in 2020, as you may remember, it passed the House way majority. And then the Senate, the wrongly named Senator Trump from Martinsburg area killed it. And basically, he was kind of led the charge to kill it and gut it. And the House, of course, couldn't accept their gutted version. All that being said, the short question is, we're still stuck with that language in the West Virginia code and constitution that allows the governor to have virtually unlimited powers. And as far, you correct me if I'm wrong, as far as I know, the legislature this time did not correct that. In fact, I didn't even see that it came up. I think this is a very short-sighted view. Do you have any opinions on these matters?
I really do. Yes, and I agree wholeheartedly that the mandates were in fact wrong. I don't believe that those mandates helped people in any real way. I don't believe that mask mandates, vaccine mandates, mandates to close businesses or anything like that, frankly, are even constitutional, much less from the U.S. Constitution or from the West Virginia Constitution, from my understanding of it. But I do disagree with any kind of mandates that are going to be imposed. Frankly, I think that the governor exercised far more power than he actually has under the Constitution. And I don't think that he should have been trying to impose those types of mandates. I think that there were efforts, there were bills in the House, and I thought there were some bills in the Senate to do away with some of the mandates, but I don't think that they passed. And I was I haven't been able to keep up with the last versions that have been passed or anything, but I believe all of them failed, and they failed in one of the committees. And that's something that we need to try and resolve. And I believe they all were in the Senate, as you indicated. So
yeah, I think I misspoke. I said 20. It was actually 21 when they were doing that, because in 20 it was just emerging. So I think by the time the legislature met, it was nothing was to be done yet in 20. Yes. But 21, but in 22 again, you said there were some bills.
There were some bills, I know, to look at eliminating mask mandates and to stop some of the vaccine mandate efforts by various entities. So, and I'd have to go back and research all of them, because there were a couple of thousand bills on both sides of the Senate and the House.
But you would be in favor of correcting that
absolutely,
the code where it said, like, I read that bill that that was up in 21. I think that's right, in the last legislative session, not the one that just happened, the one before. And it was a decent bill, but it got gutted. I heard some of the debate. The wrongly named, in my opinion, Mr. Trump from Martinsburg gutted it, and he said the governor was doing a wonderful job. So that kind of segues to another topic. There seems to be a lot of so-called Republicans in West Virginia who aren't really Republicans, or aren't really, like you, I see on your literature, are consider yourself or are constitutional conservative. Well, they're not really. And whether it's Republican or Democrat, there's a lot of politics as usual, or good old boy politics. Or anyway, do you have any comment about that?
Oh yeah, yes. I'm as anti-rhino as you could possibly get. I've seen rhinos essentially undermine our country for decades, almost since the time that I began voting. I voted in the primary for Reagan in 1976, and I've voted Republican ever since then. I think that it's something that we have to try and do about our own party, the Republican Party, in terms of identifying those individuals who really are not Republican or don't adhere to Republican values. And those values, frankly, the Republican Party's evolved from a big tent party in the 60s, 70s to really a much more conservative party over the last 20 years, 30 years. And yet we still have leaders within the federal system, the federal entities, Congress, specifically senators and congressmen. I would point to Mitch McConnell, Mitt Romney, Lisa Murkowski as classic rhinos. Those types of individuals, frankly, are not really Republicans. They are individuals who are exploiting their political positions for their own gain, or for a political constituency that isn't necessarily um, representative of what people who are in the Republican Party want. So
Okay.
yes, I believe that, and I believe that there are efforts to get people into our West Virginia legislature as well, who are not representative of the types of Republican values and those conservative values that we need, particularly constitutional conservative values. Individuals who believe that we do need to try and interfere in how people live, try to tell them that they need to not use fossil fuels, that they need to buy electric
Right,
cars,
right.
that need to be forced into electric cars.
So yeah. So to interject here on
Yep.
sorry on the West Virginia level. So you talked about the primary concern, and of course I share that concern too. Where our country is going. What would you do, or could you do, in the West Virginia House regarding the direction of our country?
Well, I think that we need to be trying to pass bills similar to some of the bills that we see in some other state legislatures, because we do see state legislatures standing up and pushing back on the federalist overreach, the federal overreach and power. So things like declaring that we have getting a declaration that we have an energy emergency in West Virginia, and working with other states to have them declare energy emergencies, and then begin to build or produce as much natural gas, coal as we possibly can in order to supply not only our state but other states, declaring that we have an agricultural emergency based upon the impending food shortages that we're hearing about and I believe are coming soon. So getting those types of declarations out there so that we are in fact producing as much food as we can for our own population, energy for our own population, and trying to get other states to do similar things in their state legislatures, and then thereby declare that since it is an emergency, we're not going to adhere to some of the federal regulations that are being imposed on us to try and prevent us from producing both agricultural products and energy.
Okay, right. So moving to another issue. Now, this again, I didn't see in my review. Again, like you said, there are thousands of different I guess thousands, yeah, bills. Of course, most of them never see the light of day. But election integrity, to me, that's still important. Now, I didn't hear about any big scandals in West Virginia, although some people think it's fishy locally that the what do you say? The school excess levy passed. Like I lobbied against that. That's like 40% of our property tax, and as we know, the school wastes a lot of money in Jefferson County. So I know that's not directly related, but here's what I'm getting at. Some people think they don't know anybody who voted for that daggone thing and it passed. But anyway, here's my question: what should be or could be done for strengthening election integrity? And I'll also mention recently, in the last since 16, so in 18 and 20, and now in 22, we have only electronic voting machines, like when we go to vote here in Shenandoah, well, Jefferson County. And those are kind of like what some people call black box machines. Before you could, if you wanted, vote on a paper ballot, but no longer. So should we do anything about that? Also, the line's ridiculously long. Why? Because they had like 3 daggum machines, and they only processed, I counted it and checked it, 35 voters an hour on these machines. So it also increased voting time. So 2 questions. Yeah, what can we do about election integrity, or should we do, if anything, in your opinion? And what about this thing about this trend to use machines? And also, I'm not clear. I was meaning to research more, but are those machines mandated at the state level, or is that the choice of Jefferson County?
Well, I'm not sure what about the machines and whether or not they're mandated. I will say that I'm absolutely a proponent of free and fair elections. I want to see if we can work with some of those entities that are looking at election reform to establish more free and fair elections. We've seen that ever since the 2020 election, with a large surge in efforts to see if we can develop a much freer and more transparent election process. So I would like us to work with our Board of Elections to work in the state, work with other state elections entities, as well as reform entities to determine the best way forward. I'm not a fan of the black box type voting systems. One, as you mentioned, we don't have enough. I would say that's probably a problem because that tends to deter people from voting if they're getting into a line that extends too long and they don't want to wait that long.
Yeah, to wait 45 minutes. We went in 16, they had one or two machines, but you could vote paper ballot. Boom, you just go in, you vote, you're out. So
Right.
people were standing around 45 minutes just simply because, they didn't have that option anymore. And there was, instead of 8 voting stations, there were like 3.
Yeah, I would like to see us try and get back to some kind of system where, in fact, there's a paper record of any type of vote, whether it is a machine-generated paper record or it's a paper ballot itself.
Well, let me interject about that.
Go ahead.
The
Sure.
machine prints a record, but
Right.
I'm not okay. I'll make a confession.
Right.
Last time I voted, I didn't look at the daggum thing to see if it printed what I voted for. So and actually I saw a survey that like 75% of people didn't properly look. So I mean that's an issue right there. And also, yeah, so I mean, yeah, it does print out a little paper, but also a lot of people don't look at it. I have to confess, even I've been guilty of that, even though I'm in favor of more integrity. Why interject this machine? And these machines, the code is unknown. They're not like what
And,
supposedly
yeah,
some states have laws that they can get the computer code. Anyway, why even do that? We don't know what the machine's doing. We don't know if it's connecting to some server in God knows where. I
yeah.
mean,
And
supposedly it's not, but many people proved that that was not
and
correct.
you saw that with the Dominion machines and the discussions
Right.
about the Dominion machines in other states. And that I think is something that needs to be investigated for those elections. But we need to absolutely ensure transparency.
Right. Why
I,
why even use those machines? I don't understand. And if you have a paper ballot, it's still true that I guess the machine tabulates it. But if there's a question, there's less hands involved.
right. And
Anyway,
at that point, you actually have a system you can go back and actually verify that vote was that vote. You don't have to worry about whether or not the individual, as you mentioned, looked at the machine close enough to determine whether or not they voted correctly before they hit the button and everything. Because you could end up with something like that.
yeah, well, it
And
prints
those
out the little
machines,
paper and you're supposed to check it and then you give it to the attendant. And if I'm not mistaken, then they feed it into the tabulator.
right.
So,
Well, my sons, two of my sons work cybersecurity issues. One is an infantry lieutenant, so he's in East Africa now. He's not doing that right now, but he works as a cybersecurity operations officer. So, and my other son does cybersecurity software engineering. And I can tell you from my background in counterintelligence, where we were looking at those types of activities, it is not that difficult for an entity to get inside of a system, such as we're talking about with this election system, and create a malware that can change votes or can change the way that votes are read. So that I think is a significant threat, and I've heard people say that that can be mitigated. I don't think that that threat would exist as you're talking about with paper ballots, because you're not talking about being inside of a system. At that point, you have to, you can still count all of those ballots by hand. That is a tedious process, I understand. But the point is free and fair elections. If it's tedious and we get a free and fair election, that's better than if it's not tedious and we do not get a fair election.
yeah, agreed. And then also, probably to close the topic down, yeah, I think that's important. And also the thought escaped my mind. But let's move along on another topic that I think is really underreported in West Virginia, and I'd like to get your opinion. And each year there are many bills now for 3+ decades dealing with this, and that what is some people call vaccine choice. Now I know during COVID expansion of this term became much more widespread. But as you may or may not know, West Virginia, you should know anyway, we'll talk about now, they do not allow attendance at any public school or private school unless you receive all the doses, which is 13 or 14 doses. No, there's 11 vaccines, and I think it's 14 doses between, birth and 18. If you don't take all those vaccines, I'm not talking about COVID, although that could be stuck on there in the future because you know how crazy the CDC is. West Virginia is one of only 2 states in the country, other than Mississippi. Oh no, now it's 4, I think. But originally 2 states that says you may not attend public school or private school unless you have all these vaccines. And a group of people, including myself, have been fighting against that, and it never gets so far anywhere. Most of those bills never see the light of day. Would you fight for this right? I think it's so crazy that this is the Mountaineer state, and we have all this by the way, I'm in favor of Second Amendment rights. I see you are, but we don't have the right to choose what goes into our children's own bodies.
Well,
Do you have a comment on that?
would. Yeah, I absolutely would support that because I consider that another intrusion by government in our personal lives. I don't believe that the government should be dictating what we do put into our bodies and what we don't. And that's the type of overreach by both state and federal government that I want to try and fight. I don't dispute that vaccines help, but those aren't necessarily something that help everyone. And in particular, we've seen that with the COVID vaccine. My father passed away 4 days after he got his second shot of the vaccine, and it was from the vaccine, although that's not the way that I'm sure that the medical examiner listed it, because that's the way that we've been kind of manipulating data, unfortunately, within our country in order to try and convince people of things. But yes, I absolutely would be fighting against that type of mandate. And it kind of goes back to aspects of our West Virginia Constitution, wherein it tends to be much more centralized than many other state constitutions. That's because of the way that it was developed. It was developed not by West Virginians. It was developed by people outside of the state who did not trust the people of West Virginia. I trust the people of West Virginia. I think that we need to be making revisions to our overall West Virginia Constitution in order to decentralize our government and ensure that our government is in the hands of the people. We should be trying to lessen the impact of our state government, not only just our federal government. I talked a lot about the overreach of the federal government, but we also have an overreach by our own state government. And in particular, I look at our state board of education, which directly impacts what you're talking about in terms of the vaccine. Our state board of education is an unaccountable fourth branch of government, essentially. It does what it wants to do. It has 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans appointed by the governor. Well, that doesn't make a great deal of sense.
Yeah. Oh, let me interject there. It's actually the legislature sets the policy that's for the vaccines. But go ahead.
Yeah, we need to put our state board of education back under control. There's a bill that I believe has passed and that is going to be signed that will give the legislature some oversight over the state board of education. But frankly, I'm not sure I understand the rationale for a state board of education. And unless there's a great argument for a state board of education, I'd like to see us eliminate the state board of education and ensure that our county boards of education are in fact working for the people first and for working with the county commissions as opposed to adhering to what a state board of education
Okay.
Yes, I would fight against any kind of vaccine mandate.
Well, we've been stuck with that, so you would be we'd be glad to have a good fighter in there. So that's a positive point for you. In my opinion, that's an issue that's close to my heart, and a lot of people actually.
Well, freedom is to me as well. I mean, that's freedom. That's what we're trying to fight for. That's what I'm going to fight for my entire time as a delegate.
Okay, you mentioned seeking out on your campaign literature workers who have been dismissed due to vaccine mandates. I think that's a good idea, but on the other hand, we have entities like, I'm not sure exact policy of like one of the big entities in the state is WVU Health, which, you know, ironically, I think the vice president or president was the advisor to Governor Justice, who made all these terrible decisions. So to me, that's a huge conflict of interest. Here's a large health entity in the state, which gets large amount of money from the state, advising the governor, which makes money from these decisions. That seems so. Point I'm getting at is probably they have rules like in WVU Health, which is one of the major, I think, no, definitely the biggest provider in the state, that they can't probably hire employees who aren't vaccinated. I'm not sure. But so I'm saying, in order to implement some of your campaign points may require legislative action, or do you have any comment?
Absolutely. I believe it will. And I believe that that's the type of systemic corruption. I'm not going to say it's personal corruption, but that's the type of systemic corruption that we need to be trying to fight within our state and ensure that we are opening up our state as much as possible to businesses, to the types of people that want to move here to better our state. And that's the type of, like I said, systemic corruption that we need to be working against within our government and trying to resolve that with some amendments to our Constitution that resolve some of the over centralization, because I consider that part of the over centralization.
Yeah, and I might point out, delegates such as yourself should think about the fact, in my opinion, I know personally of parents who've moved out of the state because of these vaccine mandates and failure to get any exemptions. And it's almost impossible to get exemptions. Supposedly it's medical, but they only give like 100 in the whole state in a year. That's very few. Even that's very hard to get.
Yes.
So if we're smart, we should have more freedom. Then parents will move in instead of moving out.
Right.
You know?
And that's what I would like to try and help, is create a better environment in West Virginia and in Jefferson County for not only people to move in, but also for businesses to move in. Because I think we can bring in businesses if we create a better environment. I'm not a huge fan of tax incentives or things like that for businesses. We're trying to attract businesses that are going to change the culture of West Virginia or displace the people so that they can bring in new people into our area. What we want to do is try and create an environment where businesses want to come in. They compete to come into West Virginia so that they can compete for the people that we have here as workers for their businesses. And creating an environment where freedom and liberty is our principal focus is I think the best way for West Virginia to advance its cause of liberty.
Okay. Yeah, agreed on that. And yeah, well, I want to mention one other issue. I'm involved in like a nonprofit that deals with education, specifically education, sexual health education centered around sexual abstinence for marriage. And we provided that in various schools. So considering that pretty much all states or all school districts provide some kind of like HIV prevention, such as health education, do you think abstinence-centered education is a good idea as the standard for school-age youth?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I'm wholeheartedly pro-life and have been for all of my career, all of my life, frankly. Not my career, because my career as a politician started in December. It hasn't. It's not like I wanted to be a politician throughout my life. I've never had any intent to do this. But I believe that abstinence and teaching our children a thinking wherein they understand that life is in fact precious and valuable is absolutely, should absolutely be part of our education if we are going to teach anything relative to sexual education.
Yeah, I know some people say, hey, that should be done in the family. I do agree that is the relevant thing. But the fact is, people should realize, people who say that, I think they don't, maybe they never had their kids in a public school. Hello, since like 1990, they're teaching health education and teaching HIV/AIDS prevention. So it is being taught. So it should be absence centered, in my opinion.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. What we don't want is, we don't want to try and teach the types of things that the left is proposing we teach in many schools relative to transgenderism, or sexual promiscuity. Those types of
Agreed. And
things.
also the
Yeah,
so-called all the LGBTQ whatever agenda.
yeah,
We're talking about,
that's
you
not
know,
appropriate.
basic common sense stuff. Like
Yeah,
if you don't have sex, you'll be more successful if you wait till you're married to have children. If you graduate
yes,
from high school, you'll
yeah.
be 90% less likely and your children to live in poverty. Basic good information like that.
Well, we should be trying to teach our children how to be good citizens within our society, and
Right.
that includes civics. But we end up spending more time on non-core type issues than we do on the core type issues, and that's
Right.
something that we need to be looking at within our entire educational system. Why are we not focused on core issues? Health education, yes, that is of value, and we do need to teach aspects of it. We need to teach our children about our own history, an accurate version, not the 1619
Right.
CRT version
Agreed.
of our history, which is at best inaccurate, but really is more propaganda than it is anything else. So, but if we are teaching health education, teaching them that abstinence, teaching them that family values are important, and that establishing a family is the best way to do any type of progression in your life is
Right.
is what we should be doing, not teaching them the types of things that you and I just talked about in terms
Right.
of
Agreed.
promiscuity and LGBTQ, et cetera.
Right. Yeah. So to turn to a local issue, and I guess we're coming near the end of this interview. So you mentioned accessing Mission Road to the south. Well, I've surveyed
But
Shannondale residents. I live in Shannondale, by
yeah,
the way, and there is most people support that. Uh, I assume you're talking about the fact that Mission Road dead ends, and there's some probably 4,000 some almost people down that way, and that if there's ever an emergency, you can't really evacuate those people on a little 2-lane road. Or do you want to say anything else about
yeah.
that?
Let me just clarify that I'm not really looking to see if we could move Mission or create something from Mission Road all the way down to Route 7. I don't think that would be feasible.
Okay.
I've talked with a number of folks. I've driven all down through there. There are people that say that you can actually drive from Mission Road down to Route 7 via some tracks that are down there. Not unless you're in a Humvee, and I've been in plenty of Humvees in some extremely rough terrain, and
It
that would be
doesn't go
incredibly
through.
challenging.
I
Yeah,
mean,
it
maybe with the
doesn't. It doesn't.
ATV, you could
No,
have gone through
I'm
one
not
point.
talking about that. What I'm looking at is maybe cutting some emergency roads, and I've looked at basically 3 areas. I'm not sure that all 3 would be good, accessible emergency roads to get people out of the northern part of the Mission Road area, out through Mountain Mission, um, mainly through the Mountain Mission area, and the Mannings area, in order to try and get to 115. I do think that we should have some kind of emergency preparedness drills on occasion with the state police fire department, to test that out. One, you would have
So
to
can
cut
I
the road.
interject to
Sure,
clarify?
go ahead. Yeah.
So I'm somewhat familiar with what you're talking about since I've been studying it some. So the northern part, I mean, there are some roads. There's one road which is quite steep, probably not so practical. Big Fur Trail has a
Yep.
gate, and then there's a private road
Yes.
there that
Uh-huh.
could be an exit for the north part,
That's
although it's
possible.
not
Yes.
currently. But and also there's a very short distance between the Cool Glen area and then the area behind what do you say, Blue Ridge
Blue Ridge.
Elementary. Are you
Yeah.
talking
Blue Ridge
about that area making more than one exit versus the south thing we were
Both of
mentioning?
those areas, and between Grandview Court and I can't remember the name of the road. I think it's Mountain. But yes, that's another possibility. And those, what I would propose, and this is something that needs to be looked at, is cutting those in, at best, at probably graveling them, and having a gate that the state police or the fire departments can control, so that we could allow an exit, so basically quadruple. And I'm not sure that all 3 would be feasible. And maybe that we would only triple our capacity.
Okay,
to
so again, you're
get
not
folks out.
thinking about any southern way to go
permanent,
out.
yeah, not permanent roads. No, I don't
But
believe
yeah,
that.
but even emergency to the south, what are you thinking of anything or no?
Well, I've thought about the possibility, and this would again have to be studied, and it would have to be approved by the population of Shannondale. This isn't something that should be um, dictated by either the county or by the state, frankly. This is something that I think that the people of the Shannondale area, the John Brown Farm area, should be looking at in terms of a bridge over the Shenandoah that would link up with the Cabletown area. Whether or not that's feasible, again, that's something would have to be studied. I think there have been some studies in the past. I have not looked at those, but
Okay.
I do worry about this, and I worry about this because I've had to fight a couple of fires out in California when I was in the Marine Corps, when we were loaned out to the local authorities to help fight fires, some of the wildfires that would occur there. If we have a significant drought in this area, and we do have a fire, particularly with some of the underbrush that we have, you could see a pretty serious issue. I personally fought one fire down in the Shannondale area that a transformer blew, and it caught some brush fire, and was preparing to get to an abandoned structure, home. An abandoned home, and if with the winds going the way they were, if it had progressed, it would have gotten over to a home just next door. So we were able to put the fire out. It took the fire department and great folks, and I really appreciate the volunteers, but it took the fire department about 20-25 minutes. If we hadn't been there, it definitely would have caught that house on fire, the abandoned house on fire, and potentially it spread. The issue, part of the issue I see is that we've got some pretty good winds a lot of times coming up the mountain, as you know from that area. If you've got a very dry spell, a drought of some kind, you could potentially have a serious fire running up the mountain, and then you've got to get people out of there very quickly.
Yeah.
And if you have any road, any kind of an accident on Mission Road itself, you've then got some kind of a traffic jam where people are not going to be able to get out. And at that
Yeah.
point, I've listened to people say, well, you know, can just walk across the ridge. I've been up on the ridge. You're not walking across that ridge if you're not in reasonably good condition. We have elderly, we have children, we have people who
Yeah, I
don't
agree.
have that ability.
You
And
should
other people
mention
have said,
that
you
there's,
just,
yeah, there's a
yeah,
lot of preserved
yeah,
area there. There's a Friends retreat and stuff, so that is a consideration. It's a beautiful area.
well,
Well,
and
go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to mention that. I mean, so you know, that's something to consider. But yeah, no, I agree. It's definitely a safety issue too.
Yeah, it really is. And
Yeah,
we need to be making sure that we're taking care of all of the people, not just the people who, you know, who say they can swim the Shenandoah River. That's
yeah, I
great,
hear you.
except,
All
you
right.
know, there are a
So
large number of people who are not going to be able to swim the
yeah,
Shenandoah or
no,
climb over the
it
river.
makes sense. I think it should receive some emphasis, maybe some kind of bridge or something there. I mean, it's a large part of the county. I mean, you're talking about what, 4,000 people or something down that way.
I
So
think it's quite a bit more than even that. I've been told, and I haven't been able to verify this, that it's the largest subdivision in West Virginia.
it's definitely largest in area. I'm not sure in the population, but yeah. So we draw to a close here. So basically, what are there other things you'd like to emphasize of why the voters should choose you or contrast you to the other candidates in the primary?
Well, I do have quite a bit of experience in dealing with the legislative and the executive side. In particular, the executive side, as I mentioned, I was a retired, or I'm a retired Defense Intelligence Agency officer. I worked with the executive branch for 40 years and understand how an executive branch of government works. I've written hundreds, probably thousands of reports, assessments for executive action within the federal government. I've worked with Congress, specifically briefed congressional subcommittees, participated in a number of meetings with congressional subcommittees, worked with congressional staffers. I actually did write a study that ended up changing federal law, the National Defense Authorization Act of 2018, in order to make a major revision to the way that our defense intelligence apparatus, the entire defense intelligence system functions. So I understand how to work with and the legislative and executive sides. I understand how to develop things that will result in legislation that can create significant changes. So from that perspective, I have, I think, a wealth of experience. I understand many of the issues that we are facing within the state. I'm continuing to educate myself on basically every day. I've been out and have talked, I estimate at this point, at least 2,800 people within the district. And I'm continuing to do that because I want to learn what people's issues are. And
congrats on getting up to Shenandoah. One of the neighbors told me you came by their house. That's impressive. I've never seen any other people campaigning in Shenandoah door to door.
I've been up on the mountain. And I mean, when I've been up on the ridge, I've been like walking all the way up on the ridge. So I cheated and drove my car up to a point and stopped and then walked up. But that's, to me, it's important to walk around because I can see what's going on with a lot of the roads. And that's one of the issues that bothers me, particularly in the Shenandoah area. We have some atrocious roads. I've been in places where I'm driving down a slope. The other car is driving down a slope. It's a one-lane road, and it's a one-lane road like I would see in Pakistan, where it's muddy at best. It's not. It's barely gravel. There might be a few gravel pieces scattered here and there, and yet that's the roads that the people have to deal with in that area. And I want to see what we can try and do about that. I want to improve our road infrastructure because, again, that's the type of thing that we can do to help increase the competitiveness that West Virginia has with other states in terms of attracting businesses because they want their people to be able to live in areas that are good.
All right. Okay. Well, yeah. Well, thank you very much for being on the show today. I do urge everyone to get out on May 10th and vote your choice in the primary election. And
I really appreciate you having me on.
Right. There's three candidates on the Republican side. So yeah, and I'm very grateful for your time to come on. So this has been an interview with Bill Ridenour, and I'm your host, Richard Urban. We will see you next time.